Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Rico, are you with us? Oh, there you are.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. There we go.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. You are now tuned in to High at 9 News. Thank you all for joining us yet again to get High at 9 with us, but also high noon on the East Coast. Somebody hear some background noise there. You guys on mute. All right, so my name is Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street, and it's Tuesday, December 13th, 2022, and also National Violin Day for all of you who need background music for your feelings. National Cocoa Day, whether it's hot or not. Brown tastes good. And Pick a Pathologist Day. Reminder, you guys have a choice, and if you don't like your doctor, find a new one. Now, for everybody out there watching, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to High at 9 News on all social media platforms. We're live on weekdays on YouTube and Twitch, audio only on Clubhouse. But if you do choose the Clubhouse route, you can also participate in the show by raising your hand, and if you have a brief comment on the story presented. Today's first story will be coming up in just a second, but before we do that, I got to read the fucking disclaimer, yo. I can't even
No. We'll do the disclaimer later.
All right, cool. Let's go to this fucking, got a little break.
At True Classic OG, we live by one motto. Stay true. We stay true to our legacy cut of True OG that's always fresh, piney, gassy, and delicious. We represent the spirit and hustle and diversity of our great city of Angels, and we stay true to the spirit of this plant, doing everything in-house to ensure that you get the highest quality and consistency with every batch. And that's what made us LA's favorite OG. True Classic OG. Stay true, Los Angeles.
The thoughts and opinions and shade thrown on here on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of any other speaker or his followers. The statements made do not constitute legal or accounting advice, and our speakers make no representation regarding the legal status of any substance, any country, area, territory, or any authorities. The views expressed in this room do not establish any fiduciary responsibility or relationship. Our sponsors do not imply or constitute any endorsement by us or the expression of any opinion whatsoever. Easily offended person, maybe you should go over to those not so wholesome people at Good Morning America. Coming out first, we got Jason Beck, the longest continuously operating retailer in the game, always smoking on the best weed in the world every damn day. Known to the Mar-a-Lago staff down in Florida as Gucci Blanco and the hustlers in Detroit as White Gucci. And anyone in West Hollywood knows him as El Presidente as he leads us into the future of cannabis tourism. Jason Beck, it is Tuesday. What do you have for us, my man?
Oh, yeah. Good morning, Rico. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. Yesterday, we talked a lot about New York, and I'm going to talk a little bit about more of New York because they want to okay those delivery licenses, right? And we're saying how much it's going to be hard pressed for them to fight against the illicit market. Well, today, my story, New York's OCM, Office of Cannabis Management and Law Enforcement, declined to say exactly how many illegal sellers they believe to be operating in the city or how many storefronts they've closed down so far. Interesting. City Hall on November 14th launched a task force to combat illegal cannabis sales composed of the New York Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, the city's Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, and the state's Cannabis Management Office. In its first week in operation, the group seized close to 100,000 packages in its first week. Cartoons and other cannabis products, which totaled around $2.5 million, according to a city official familiar with the program, who was unauthorized to speak publicly on the operations. The agencies also made 2 arrests and issued over 300 civil violations and more than 30 criminal court summonses. In one instance, the sheriff's office confiscated nearly 250 pounds of cannabis, roughly equivalent to $650,000 worth of wholesale marijuana, from an outpost in the Bay Ridge neighborhood of Brooklyn, according to a statement. Still, that sum is a small dent compared with the almost $2 billion of illegal pot sales in the state projected for 2022, as estimated by Cannabis Public Policy Consulting, an advisory firm that works with the state governments and other agencies to track cannabis data. The market for adult use cannabis sales is projected to reach $1.3 billion in New York City alone by next year, according to a statement in August from the mayor's office. One big concern is for city officials that the public doesn't understand that stores currently selling weed are doing so illegally. That's likely led to New Yorkers purchasing cannabis they think is regulated and presumably tested by the state. I don't think anyone is buying that one, but whatever. About 40% of cannabis products purchased from illicit stores in the city were found to contain harmful contaminants such as E. coli, lead, and salmonella, according to a report released on November 30th, commissioned by the New York Medical Cannabis Industry Association. In a quote, the regulated businesses ensures a quality control mechanism for the use and access of these products. Sheriff Anthony Murata said in an interview, whereas with the illicit market, there's no quality control there. We don't know what they're cross-mixing these things with. Some of the illegal stores are also flouting the state's proposed regulations regarding where dispensaries can be located. One store in Park Slope, Brooklyn, is about a block from a public school and even closer to a playground. Dispensaries aren't allowed to be within 500 feet or 100 meters of. The politics of arresting people for selling marijuana is delicate, given a major force behind New York's decision to legalize pot sales was to create a safer, taxable market that would address the impacts of the past war on drugs on low-income communities and people of color. In a quote, I think the state will get fairly active in shutting down illegal dispensaries, said Mitch Kulik, a New York cannabis attorney. But given the industry's historical enforcement has been rife with discriminatory practices, he suspects the state will issue fines to landlords that rent space to unlicensed dispensaries instead of retailers themselves. Our friend Vladimir Bautista, co-founder of Happy Monkey and cannabis lifestyle company vying for a dispensary license, said New York has to strike a balance between arresting people and creating what he called Prohibition 2.0 and hampering the viability of licensed sellers. Right now, it looks like there's a free-for-all, Bautista said during a recent panel hosted by Columbia Business School and the law firm Goldwyn Proctor. Then there's the issue of how the law is currently written. A spokesperson for the NYPD said there's no express enforcement mechanism outlined in state laws as to when and how to act when an unlicensed shop is displaying cannabis for sale. Only when someone is caught actually selling it. Excuse me. Even then, the penalties are limited due to the issues with the law as written, the NYPD said in a statement. The NYPD continues to advocate for reasonable amendments to the law that would enable appropriate enforcement for violators. And although the task force has made some headway in confiscating THC products, coordinating between multiple agencies can have its pitfalls as well, said City Council member Carla Riviera, who represents Manhattan's East Village and adjacent neighborhoods. Riviera said the NYPD has primarily operated on a compliant-driven basis and that she isn't always notified when police have shut down an illegal storefront. in a quote, she says, if you're operating in the gray area, you are not only jeopardizing your future of obtaining a legal license, but you're also creating havoc in this legal market. She said, purgatory is a good word for it, she says. Well, I do agree with Mitch, the attorney that's quoted in here. I happen to know him as well, and I do think that the only realistic plan that they could do for is to go after the landlords and whatnot. But we shall see what happens, because New York has already made the pledge to not arrest people for selling marijuana. So let's see what happens. And this is Jason Beck reporting for the High at 9 News.
I disagree with just going after the landlords. I'm sorry. If someone is selling bad product, contaminated product, I don't care if they've been in the trap their whole life. They need to go. I'm so sick and tired of everyone being like, oh, because I was a criminal before, I get a free pass. That is ridiculous. If we are going to have a safe, regulated market, bad actors need to be dealt with. If you want to start with fines, all right, start with fines. Second offense, you need to come down with the hammer. I'm sick of this shit.
Gretchen, I have a question for you.
Yes.
In the reality of enforcement of the scheme that you just put forth, the reality is that you would arrest someone for selling so-called suspected contaminated product. Then you would have to hold them for 72 hours while that product is tested to see if that product actually is contaminated or not.
No, Jason Beck. No. Once again, you love putting words in my mouth.
Then how would that work? How would that work?
Suspected product. I said if they have found someone to be putting out their contaminated product, you need to go after them. So you need to
hold
have.
on. So
no. Let me finish my statement. You need to have people who are willing to go into these places, actually do the testing, find out what's going on. You need to actually try and have a good, safe, regulated market. You need an agency that is dedicated to protecting the public's health. That's what you need to do.
So then your solution would be to send a secret shopper in to go and make purchases, then test the weed, and then once they find contaminants in there, then go in and raid the shop and seize everything and arrest everybody for selling contaminated weed.
I'm not saying arrest everybody. I said start with fines and then you go from there. But 100%, yes, you send in secret people. Yes, you go after people who don't have licenses in the beginning. Yes, you need to go in and say, who gave you a license to be here? Oh, nobody? Here's a $100,000 fine. You need to start cracking down. I don't care if that is not considered, a good opinion in this industry, but we are going nowhere if we continue to just placate the illicit market.
Sean, what are you going to say about this, Sean? Oh, go ahead. What's that, Chris?
No, I saw Sean with his hand up.
Go ahead, Sean.
As someone who's been on the front lines of the drug war in Central America, there's a famous line in Narcos Mexico that makes sense. Drug suppliers and going after the supply chain, they're like cockroaches. Gretchen, you're not going to enforce any of this out of existence. All you are is starting Prohibition 2.0.
So your answer is don't regulate it at all.
No. The only way we beat the illicit market is we have to arm the industry to compete to beat the illicit market. That means a lot lower taxes, a lot less regulation for a plant that kills nobody. And the problem is we have an industry using regulation to build their oligopoly. Let's take Boris Curaleaf, where he said at MJ BizCon it's going to come down to 6 people. How the hell do you get there? You create a lot of regulation that takes a lot people with a lot of money to participate in, and fuck the rest of us. No way.
I am not suggesting. I am not suggesting that you regulate this industry out of business. I'm saying you regulate it safely.
Well,
and
when the FDA gets involved,
on a safe level, you shouldn't be in the industry.
How efficient is government regulation done for us? And by the way, who pays the Washington Insider bills?
Good Lord. Number one, I work with a company, USP, who's been around longer than the FDA, frankly, and it is their job to make sure that consumers are kept safe. And they do that with science. They do it with standards. And I know you laugh at that, but they're the reason that you don't die every time you pick up a new bottle of Tylenol. This is something that we need to care about. And the fact that the industry doesn't care is why no one in Washington takes us seriously.
I agree with Gretchen 100% on that point. That is 100% factual reality. And that is why cannabis gets nothing accomplished in DC.
spoken from our two Washington insiders. I appreciate you both.
Oh, you are so silly.
I just
You know
wanted to
what?
stay silent. I just wanted to stay silent on that one, so just so Gretchen and Jason can go at it a little bit, because I'm always down for a little Republican on Republican, elephant fight. I'm always down for
Little
that
R&R.
I see what you did there. I like it.
Chris, did you have a comment on this coming from a law enforcement background in regards to this?
I agree with Sean. The plant has killed nobody, right? But I think it's important to note that, to Gretchen's point, if there are contaminants in there that are unsafe for the consumer, that should be dealt with. As far as from law enforcement perspective, they don't know how many are out there. They're not saying how many are out there because they just don't know. Law enforcement is really good at skewing the data, so I think it's important to track and make note of any numbers that NYPD or the sheriff's office out there is throwing out there.
I'd just like to say one thing real quick, and it's this is not saying or discounting anybody's points. You're both right. The problem is, Gretchen, that these are arbitrary kind of thresholds that these testing standards are developed upon. And that's the problem. It's the problem with food. It's the problem with all kinds of consumer products. So it doesn't matter. What Sean's saying is that, like, that's the BS of it. That's what's, kind of the counterintuitive, discussion is you're talking about regulating market, but you have no concept of where to start with these standards. How do you know what part per million or part per billion of a compound is good enough or safe enough for you to consume when the same product is in the food you eat, in the water you drink, in all of that? That's the whole entire impetus of the argument Sean's putting up. And he's right. There is none. So we have to educate ourselves. So where do you start? Do you start backwards? Do you start regulating before you know? Unconscious way to move forward. That's
Well, number one, there is research out there that is available, and this is what people like the USP and the ASTM do for a living. Yes, they do know what levels that things should be at. And frankly, the answer to regulating this and making this happen is a ton of money needs to come from the government to actually give these resources to the agencies that they need to be able to have a secret shopper, to have the people to go out there to test, to have actual certified testing facilities, and not these morons who you give them a couple extra bucks and they give you whatever result you want. There needs to be regulation, and I'm sorry if people don't think there should be, because it's just a plant. Well, just a plant caused the Valley crisis of 2019 when people were putting whatever they wanted into vape products. It is not just a plant. There are bad actors making this plant as cheaply and as crappily as they possibly can and do not care about the consumer on the other end. Not everyone is a wonderful, loving legacy lover of the plant in Humboldt singing to their plants. That's not how this industry works, and you know.
Not every politician actually goes through with what they pledge to fucking do either.
Hey, Gretchen.
Yes.
Since you seem to be a defender of the FDA, let's talk about the perversion of the FDA by Big Pharma. Let's talk about here. I have 150,000 American families, 100,000 overdoses last year from opiates, FDA approved. I have 50,000 suicides, some of which are attributed to psych meds, because FDA stated risk of meds, suicidal ideation. It makes you want to blow your head off. I'm a suicide survivor. Lamictal made me want to kill myself. So before you go trotting out an organization that has more blood on its hand than any cannabis supply chain to protect us, let's look behind the smoke and mirrors.
All right. Well, first off, I trotted out the USP, not the FDA. But I think that agencies are available and we should be working with them. And that's what this industry needs to do to move forward. That's what New York needs to do to start to move forward. You can't just allow the illicit market to run wild just because you feel bad for them and what's happened in the past. That's not going to build a good market.
Ultras in with all their private equity funds and stuff like that to take over the industry. That's much better than.
I'm not saying. Again.
That's not what Gretchen's saying. That's not what Gretchen's saying.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
You guys are missing
it's what will happen whether she intends it or not or means it.
Gretchen, I build these GMP facilities all over the country. They cost a lot of money. There's not
I'm aware.
very many operators that can afford
and we have said repeatedly, if you don't have the money to play the game, you shouldn't be in it.
Well, then you're gonna have passionless. You're gonna have a
We're the
worse
90% of
product for
America.
people to consume.
Capitalism is the real culprit.
Oh, all right, guys. All right.
Capitalism
That
is
was
the
a
real
fascinating
culprit.
discussion. Lots of spice and dice in there. But coming up next, we have the dope dad himself. That's right. When he's not doing daddy daycare, you can find him at a TEDx convention. But when he does daddy daycare, he often does the same events that he does at TEDx conventions, where you may chew on some crayons, you may share some paste, and you may make a shell link necklace. That's right. It is the dope dad himself, Rico Lamitte.
Yeah, what's happening, everybody? Thank you for another great introduction, Jason. And my story today comes from Green State, and it's an informational piece. I actually really like these as a parent, and it's called "What to Do If Your Child Accidentally Eats Cannabis." So we're living in unprecedented times. Usage and access to cannabis is at an all-time high as the ever-expanding footprint of legalization and decriminalization shows no signs of slowing down. But with the many rewards that come along with the widespread liberating of our favorite plant, when you're a parent, there are risks. Now, being the dopest dad alive comes with a whole lot of perks. Not only is my daughter objectively the cutest, smartest, most talented little girl of all time, and I'm not even arguing with any of y'all on the subject because I've played it out repeatedly in my head several times, and all roads lead to one of us ending up in a body bag, so just let it go. And I admit it because my wife's a licensed mental health professional who works with kids daily. I come from a more privileged place with a slight informational edge over some of my pot parent peers in the game. Jasmine's cool with me speaking openly about being a father at the forefront of the cannabis renaissance, encouraging others to do the same in our collective effort to destigmatize and educate one another while the rest of the world around us tries to figure it out too. But I'll never claim to have all of the answers. This is why I'm so damn glad to have all of you in this shit with me. As much as we all like to call out bad parents who either give kids bad info about what cannabis is or isn't, the ones who carelessly or recklessly leave stashes out in the open unattended, or even worse, the ones who consciously give weed to kids thinking that there's nothing wrong with that. The truth is, child cannabis consumption can happen on any of our watch, and especially during the holiday season when we're likely to be gathering in large groups with our guards down. So as I've evolved over the past 2.5 years into a much more seasoned and responsible dope dad, and I know there's a few other phenomenal pop parents in the room with us today who share my sentiment, I really dig these informational pieces, and I wanted to share the 3 main tips from Green State today. Before opening the conversation up to critique and additional info from other parents and doctors present, so we can all better arm ourselves with the best protection for the kids in our lives available and in the event an emergency does happen. And a reminder before the non-parents in the room mentally check out, we've all got grandkids, nieces, nephews, cousins, friends, and neighbors' kids. Shit, all kinds of kids around us at different points of our lives. And let's face it, sometimes we've got weed on us. Most of the time we've got weed on us. And it just might end up accidentally consumed by a minor. So while none of us want to become a protect the children from these terrible stoner statistic, it's important to have a game plan on deck to prevent a bad situation from getting worse. And per the article, if you know that your child or a child under your protection has consumed cannabis, please call the U.S. Poison Control at 1-800-222-1222. All right, the first tip, know the symptoms. Kids are weird as fuck, and at most ages, and it can be pretty hard to tell if they have or haven't actually ate weed. But if your stash is open and you can't tell if anything's missing, sometimes the kid in your life's too young to tell you what happened. In this case, check for the symptoms. Monitor the child's behavior for roughly 3 hours and answer these questions while observing them. All right, number 1, are you acting more anxious or paranoid than usual? Number 2, do they seem dizzy or nauseous? Number 3, are they showing signs of being physically impaired or slurring their words? Number 4, are they abnormally drowsy? Number 5, if your stash is a little lighter than you remember, and the answer is yes to any of those questions, odds are that they consume some of your shit. So number 2, what do you do? Identify when your child consumed that product. The article says that the two most important bits of info to gather if you know your kid did actually consume cannabis is what product they actually took and when did they take it. Raw cannabis flower generally won't get a person high, but most other products with more than CBD levels of THC content will. We all know the effects of an edible can kick in over an hour after consuming, so if they took a brownie or a gummy and they ain't too fucked up already, ask them when they ate it. Even though there's no one-size-fits-all method to determining when and how bad the high will get, having that info at least gives you a rough idea of the amount of time you have before the effects actually do come into play. It's important to let them know that they're in a safe place with people who love them and that nothing bad is going to happen to them. If they start feeling sick, get them to a bathroom or a safe place to lie down. And number 3, call poison control. Self-snitching is something none of us ever want to do or be in a position to have to do, and hopefully none of us will ever be in this position. But if the life of your child or a child in your protection matters, as it should, it's never a bad idea to call poison control for help with guidance on what to do next. Per the article, it's extremely unlikely for a child to die from cannabis consumption. However, they can still suffer lasting physical, mental, or emotional harm from eating an edible. Acute marijuana intoxication can occur, leading to chest pains, panic attacks, or hallucinations, and it might be best for you to take the kid to the hospital. Per the article, if a child's experienced adverse symptoms or suffers from a pre-existing condition, making them more susceptible to negative side effects of cannabis, call poison control immediately. They have experts on hand who can guide you through the crisis until you get to a hospital if that's what the proper course of action is. And poison control is well trained and more than happy to help, and their services are free. They're also legally bound to confidentiality and won't report you of possession if you live in a state where cannabis is illegal. While I found that these tips are helpful as a short guide as to what to do if a dope dad's worst nightmare were to come true, the most important thing is to be proactive about keeping your kids away from your weed. Personally, all my weed's in high places, out of reach from my young daughter, and I also use lock boxes, which come in pretty fashionable varieties these days. Two that actually come to mind are Virginia-based Lock Green products, which make great rugged outdoor proof, odor-proof stash boxes that you can put in your trunk or whatever. And my favorite that I actually have myself is Apothecary. Really, really stylish shit. High-end shit if you want to flex. They come with combination locks in addition to key access and offering you a double dose of protection necessary to keep kids out and also back up if your stoned ass forgets the key or forgets the combination. There's plenty of other options out there, but those are the two that I personally know. And if you have any others, put those in the comments too, please. Protect your weed. But I'm going to open the conversation up here to other parents or professionals in the room. What are your thoughts on these 3 tips I've shared today from Green State in response to accidental child consumption? And were they accurate, or should anything be added there? And of course, the best thing that you all can do is make sure you just lock your shit up and make sure you stay aware. If you have kids anywhere around you, you know that you're in the industry, or you're a stoner yourself, lock your shit up. Make sure that it's not readily available, because we don't need any more of these stories pushing us back in legislation. So I'm Rico Lamitte, dopest dad on the street, and I'd love to hear what everybody else has to say about this one. Thank you for joining us on High at 9 News.
I mean, I threw there in the chat. Now, full disclosure, I don't have any kids. I'm not a parent. All my kids are all grown. They're all employees. But with that said, from my knowledge and medical knowledge that I've talked with doctors and numerous physicians across, if you have an overdose of an edible or consume an edible accidentally, the best thing that you can actually do for yourself is to have a glass of whole milk, something fatty, because cannabis bonds to fat, and that will immediately dilute the high.
But if it's a kid, though, man,
glass of whole milk.
All bets are, if it's a kid, you got to take that into account. You have no idea what their allergies are. You have no idea if they have pre-existing conditions and stuff like that. It's a whole.
Well, you should. Well, if you're their parent, if you're their parent, you'd know what allergies they had.
Not necessarily.
It's not even
a
about
lot of stuff
allergies.
comes later on.
it's like how they metabolically convert that THC to delta hydroxy 11, and if it's happening faster because their bodies are, working better, or it doesn't happen as fast potentially. I mean, you never know. There's really like that. The really tough part about that is like you have to get it out of your stomach as quickly as possible before your liver starts to break it down. So that there's there's really no good. There's nothing good to come out of that. There's no like help or anything. I'm a dad. I have 2 kids. I'm a everyday cannabis user, and it's just like nothing's ever changed in history. You gotta, it's your household. You have to take care of your shit. And
Right.
if you're not able to take care of your kids, it doesn't matter if it's weed. It could be alcohol. I mean, I think we've all been there. Like 11 years old sneaking dad's beer or whatever. But it's
Yep.
like it's just what you teach your kids. It's about educating. It's about destigmatizing and educating your kids every single day. It's not just a one-time thing. I mean, that's just the reality.
It's a process.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Great comments. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's cannabis or anything else in your house. There's a lot of stuff for little ones to get into, and Rico, great points, and thanks for sharing. Especially given we are going to be together over the holidays at various folks' house and folks over at our houses, etc. So, really good reminder this time of year, and great points, man. Thanks for sharing.
Absolutely, man.
So Saman, so your solution is to induce vomiting.
I mean, if they eat it and you see it, like, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like 100%, you stick your fingers down their throat and let them, make them throw it up. I mean, God forbid that ever happens.
It really is. That's like one of your worst nightmares. Not just for your kid to be poisoned by something or to get into something in your house, but just knowing that you're such an advocate of the plant. Like one of my worst nightmares is my little girl gets into a bunch of my fucking edibles and she's like assed out. I got no power in that situation. You know what I'm saying? You always want to be able to protect your kids, and like I try to stay away from like the machismo talk and like all that fucking shit. But like I do see myself as a fucking protector of my family, like straight up.
Yeah.
And to be in a situation like that is my worst nightmare. Just not having the power to help my daughter in a situation like this. So like being proactive to me is paramount. Like I got all my shit stashed up at places where she can't reach, and it's all locked up. I'm really, really anal about that stuff. If anybody comes over to the crib to smoke, to kick it or anything like that, just making sure that it stays out of sight.
And not just for cannabis. I mean, you come over to my house and you got the little magnet that undoes the cabinet. Not that that's where, any of my stuff is. It's locked in spot, but, just like cleaning products and shit like that.
Yep.
Everything. I mean, you got to go to get the little magnet, slide it around the little cupboard, and it unlocks and do the thing. Rico,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my little girl, man, she's too fucking smart though. She has like, you have those like little ratchet like locks that you put on cabinets and stuff. Like she's figured those shits out. She's figured out like the lock on the fucking fridge. So like she's gotten to the point where all of the alcohol, all the fucking weed is like top shelf fucking everywhere. On top of that. And she's climbing on shit too. So she's trying to turn up, man. She's trying to turn up. She's in her blood. I don't know, is Dr. Felicia in? I'd love to hear from any doctors.
No, she's not. She's not in. We got to move. We got to move.
Just keep it moving, man. Sorry about that. Sorry, my screen is locked up. I'm gonna just have to wing it here. Up next, we have, not only is she the founder of Panoptic Strategies, but she's also never afraid to spar with pot-loving libs across the aisle. She is the red-headed warrior of all things safe banking and FDA protector for all, the greatest FDA protector of all time, Gretchen Gailey. What do you have for us?
All right, whatever.
Tuesday morning.
Thanks for that. My headline is coming from The Hill. Simultaneous alcohol and cannabis use increased as states legalized marijuana, according to a study. More U.S. adults simultaneously used cannabis and alcohol following state-level legalizations of recreational marijuana, according to new data collected between 2008 and 2019. This month, Missouri became the latest state to legalize recreational cannabis, while New York State issued its first marijuana dispensary licenses in late November. In total, 21 states, Washington, D.C., and Guam have legalized recreational marijuana. However, writing in the Journal of General Internal Medicine, researchers explained how legalization laws raise questions about the unintended effects of cannabis and alcohol use patterns. They said simultaneous cannabis alcohol use using both substances within a short time interval so that their effects overlap has a greater risk of potential negative consequences than single substance use and is more common in younger age. Effects can include driving under the influence and increased risk of alcohol use disorders. More than 40% of Americans who use alcohol or cannabis have admitted to driving under the influence of one or both substances. Data for the current were gleaned from the 2008-2019 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, reflecting use patterns of 817,359 participants aged 12 and over. Compared with the period before recreational cannabis legalization, simultaneous use increased from 9.2% to 10.4% among those aged 21 to 30. For those aged 31 to 40, prevalence rose from 5 to 6%. While for adults between the ages of 41 to 50, simultaneous use rose from 3% to 4.7%. No differences were seen for those between the ages of 12 to 20 and adults over the age of 51. Until this study, little had been known about the recreational cannabis laws and simultaneous use in adults in the U.S., where adult cannabis use and adult use are increasing in a changing cannabis policy environment, said the lead study author, Priscilla Goncalves. In a release, Goncalves, in a postdoctoral research fellow in Columbia Mailman School's Department of Epidemiology. Researchers hypothesized the increase in simultaneous use seen among those aged 21 and older could be due to greater availability and opportunity to access cannabis through legal supply chains in states with the laws in place. Typically, recreational cannabis is only legal for those aged 21 and older. These findings build upon prior research showing that states allowing dispensaries had a greater likelihood of alcohol-related outcomes in adults aged 21 and over. That was added by Sylvia Martins, professor of epidemiology at the Columbia School. Previous research has detailed a rise in alcohol use in states that have legalized cannabis, driven largely by young adults and men. Finding of the current study suggests there may be a need to develop strategies to reduce harms relative to simultaneous cannabis alcohol use in adults aged 21 to 50. I think this is an interesting new study. I don't think, frankly, that it's breaking news that, people have more access to adult use cannabis now, and so they are using it at the same time that they're also using alcohol. I don't understand from this study if they're saying that people are using it at the exact same time or if that people are just alcohol and cannabis users. Either way, I think this is interesting. I'm sure this is going to raise some eyes and give some headlines to, to the guys over at Smart. We'll see. This is Gretchen for High 9 News. I think it's interesting. I don't think it's earth-shattering.
Crossfade for the win.
Crossfaded.
Oh, yeah. That was a big topic of conversation this weekend at the Emerald Cup. We were talking about the crossfadedness, and I was making a point to some people because they had a beer garden at the Emerald Cup, okay? But you had to walk outside in the rain to get a beer, and then they had some little tents and some tables that you could sit down and have your beer and whatnot. And I was telling people, this is the exact opposite of what cannabis consumers experience every single day at any single venue when you have to go to some isolated area and wander across the beaten path to find a safe area to consume your cannabis. Mm-hmm. And it's basically the same thing, where we had to walk all the way through the rain, through the cold, to have a cold beer in the rain and not have anywhere inside to consume it. But we could walk around the whole venue smoking weed. So it was the exact opposite of a normal concert. What do you guys think?
Well, my question is...
Bowser agrees, apparently.
That's Salem. Salem,
Bowser,
shut up!
Bowser,
oh, that's Salem.
That's Gretchen. Bowser, the superstars right there.
All right.
Salem, yeah, the dogs know what the crossfade is all about.
Yeah,
I
they're
mean, do
about
y'all
it.
see this being a problem?
No, I think this is
Um,
great news. I
Yeah,
think this
I
is
mean,
great news because
yeah.
it takes the ammunition out of the alcohol industry as saying, oh, we're going to lose all our sales to all this legalized cannabis. People are going to stop drinking alcohol and only going to smoke weed now.
And
Right.
there's
actually-
This isn't a
conflicting
sales
studies.
argument.
Yeah, and there's conflicting studies. You have some that say that there's a massive increase of crossfading, and you have other ones saying that alcohol is way down because cannabis is being legalized. So I mean, I don't know.
This says that they have a greater risk of potential negative consequences than single substance use and is more common in younger age. I see, folks against cannabis running all day and all night with this.
We want equal treatment. That's all we want. If your vice is alcohol, great. Our vice is cannabis. We don't need Washington insiders or Washington corporate to protect us. We're not asking for government to protect us.
I'm not suggesting you need protecting. I'm asking you, do you see this as a concern that
Your government,
alcohol-
I mean,
government eyes
Project
out of my
Sam-
by
business.
the people who don't like cannabis. That's what's going to
Project
happen.
Sam-
Let's not let them.
Project Sam and our other adversaries are always going to use any study that they can get their hands on, whether it proves their argument or not. They're going to skew it and present it in a way that it fits their narrative. That's just the reality of it all.
Amen.
Yeah, they're gonna say, like, pot smokers are so thirsty after smoking their joints, they're going straight to beer, and they're a menace to society now because now we got a bunch of crossfaded weed smokers out there. They're gonna absolutely, but honestly, it's like that's not surprising. I don't think anybody's surprised. A beer and a joint is kind of like baseball in this country at this point. It's like a pastime. So I don't see that going away. But I do see that as how they corral, the licenses and how they, limit and how they, push their petty tyrant kind of, agenda. And they're gonna lock us into these areas. They're gonna, say you can't mix alcohol and weed because of taxes or sales tax or some crazy nonsense. But
It's always gonna be something, right?
Yeah, always. That's 2020. This is 2023.
I hear everything you're saying, but I do think we do need to pay attention. I think that the National Survey on Drug Use and Health is a major survey that gets a lot of eyeballs in Washington, and people are going to pay attention to what they say. So this industry needs to be ready to educate and help them understand how.
What you're not understanding is
Gretchen's totally right. Hold on.
Thank you.
We gotta move. We gotta pay a quick bill because we got a few more stories to cover, so we have enough time for everybody. Adam, you got it. You got it, Adam. You want to grow some of the best weed in the world? Then you must start with the best genetics in the world. Go to www.dnagenetics.shop to order regular, feminized, or autoflower beans. All of your favorite DNA genetics cultivars such as Kosher Kush, Skywalker Kush, and oh yeah, Chocolate Truffle Shuffle. Boasting more cannabis awards for their award-winning genetics than any other company in the world. Remember to go to www.dnagenetics.shop to see why our terps don't lie. Opinions and shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of any other speaker or its followers. The statements made do not constitute legal or accounting advice, and our speakers make no representation regarding the legal status of any substance in any country, area, or territory, or of any authorities. The views expressed in this room do not establish any fiduciary relationship. Our sponsors do not imply or constitute any endorsement by us or the expression of any opinion whatsoever on the part of any speaker on stage. If you're an easily offended person, this show is probably not for you. Also, maybe you should try a crossfade. Flying into LAX and you want to taste some of the best weed in the world? Then stop by LAXCC, the closest dispensary to LAX, located at 8332 Lincoln Boulevard and open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Always make LAXCC your first stop when you touch down in LA and score like a winner. And don't forget to tell them I sent you and mention you'd like to get High at 9 for 10% off your full order.
Our next correspondent is a patient advocate, 14-year industry vet working in regulated markets across the U.S. from Colorado, California, Florida, Massachusetts, and most recently, New Jersey, the dirtiest of all Jerseys. He's an award-winning solvent extraction pioneer and product innovator specializing in licensing, facility design, build-out, product, process, systems, development, and education. He's a student of and true believer in medical properties of cannabis and has developed various wellness products currently sold and on the market that improve the lives of hundreds of people every day. And he's also a dope Faja. Coming to the stage is no other than the man himself, Saman Razani. What do you have for us today, my brother?
Salute, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to High at 9 News. Today, we got some not so great, news about our industry here in California. This one comes from Green Market Report, our friends over there. And here we go. California cannabis industry owes state $250 million in taxes. Not good, people. With penalties and fees, the money owed to the state could top $500 million. That's $500 million for those counting. The California cannabis industry as a whole owes the state $250 million in unpaid taxes, according to state data and industry experts. With added fees, the total could easily balloon into a $500 million tax tab, which is unfathomable. To combat the rising debt trend, collection efforts appear to be ramping up at the state, even against companies that have gone out of business. So word to the wise there. Settle with the tax man. As of December 2nd, the cannabis sector as a whole was carrying just over $250 million in unpaid sales and cannabis taxes out of a $4.4 billion total in taxes due to the state, according to data from California's Department of Tax and Fee Administration. But the amount due from cannabis operators could easily double when penalties and interests are tacked on, said tax attorney Regina Unigovsky. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Tax debts are mounting. Unigovsky cited an October lien letter from the CDTFA to a Los Angeles retailer obtained by Green Market Report that shows San Francisco Bay Area cultivator Grizzly Peak owes the state $13.5 million, even though the principal tax balance was only totaled $6.8 million. So as you can see, they're tacking on about 0.5% to the total tab there, and that's compounding. So, pay your bills, people. Taxman don't play.
Oh man, that's a
Can't believe they're calling out my man Matty Miles over at Grizzly Peak over there. Are they fucking singling him?
Yep. They're blowing up. They're doxing them and everything. They're blowing up the address.
Real talk. Because I know Matt was in the other story we covered about the debt bubble that we're currently in for a lot of wholesalers in the state of California, a lot of distributors that are dealing with a lot of shit. And it's like my coach used to tell me in back in college football, man. It's the plumber's proverb: shit rolls downhill. And when you don't pay your bills, other people can't pay their bills, and then we're all fucked, and we're all going to get taken over by big corporate interests, and the fucking government comes and just fucks everything up. So, man, just pay your bills and stop buying shit on credit, like straight up. Like, just stop buying shit on credit. If you can't afford to put the shit on yourselves, like, just don't buy it, man. Sell what you got. Get rid of that inventory before you bring new shit on. My sense.
Notorious B.I.G. said it best. The goddamn credit, forget it.
I'm going to drop some, I'll tell you what's really going on behind the scenes too. Besides people, we have a bad, flawed model with Prop 64, but what's no one's going to tell you, the government account payable of taxes due is the cheapest financing available in cannabis because our insiders in Washington has failed to get us safe banking. And at the end of the day, a lot of that $250 million is a choice. And again, who do we have to blame? The insiders who are doing nothing but lying.
No, it's not the insiders. No, you're wrong about that. It's the industry overall for not paying the insiders to do their job appropriately.
Spoken like a true insider.
You took that
Just the
bait.
facts
You
of
took that
reality,
bait
bro.
so quickly,
It's called the
Jason.
golden
I
rule.
saw Gretchen wanted to. Gretchen was like, I'm not going to take that bait.
I
I'm
did
not
it.
gonna
I did
do
it for Gretchen.
Pay
I
us.
did it for
Pay
Gretchen
us.
because we're stretching
run
with
a
Gretchen today.
Pay us. We'll run a non-transparent racket where you don't get what you want, and we engender ourselves to the oligarchy. Fuck that.
Oh boy.
Bring
Well,
the
Full quarters
revolution.
for that elephant bait today.
That's pretty much what Washington has to say to this industry. Fuck that. So
Exactly.
you don't get safe
LTC
banking.
to fuck them
Exactly.
too.
That's why you're not getting safe banking. That's why you're not getting any descheduling. You're not
Can't
getting
get none of the nice
no,
things.
What?
getting
We're
nothing
getting none of
in
the
your
nice
stocking
We're
but a lump
We're gonna
of
have the
coal.
good operators in the legal market who survive, and we're gonna have a gigantic illicit market that's decriminalized. Because cracking down on the illicit market is going to be about as politically popular than Joe Biden and the
All right,
DNC or the Republicans.
Sean, if we want to have time for your for your thing, we got to keep it moving.
I understand you
All
put
right.
the police officer and veteran in the back.
Founder of CC Security Solutions. He's a NorCal dope dad that traded in his issue gun for a badge and a blunt and a notepad. A former cop that's now a security consultant at CC Security Solutions and here to increase your chances of survivability. It is another fellow dope dad, Chris Sagers.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Thank you for having me. My article today comes out of Alabama. Mobile. We're going to have that debate later. Alabama. The University of South Alabama is looking for professionals to review and evaluate and score applications for medical cannabis businesses licenses. The article says that evaluators will be compensated. Doesn't say how much. The Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission engaged the university to coordinate the review, evaluation, and scoring following sections of applications in each license category. And they are financial ability, business management approach, operation plans and procedures, facility sustainability, security plans, personnel, quality control, marketing, and advertising. Applicants are required to have experience in one of these categories. They will be, there's going to be a separate panel for each category, organized and coordinating the work of evaluators assigned to the panel. Interested parties must submit an online application. It's available in the link in this article. And evaluators will receive applications to evaluate by April 14th, 2023, and approximately 40 days to complete the assigned application evaluation. Preference will be given to potential panel leads who have experience in coordinating and reviewing, evaluating, and scoring similar processes, et cetera, et cetera. I thought it was really cool that they put this out. There's a link in this article. Feel free to apply, I guess. Curious what you guys think, but I think this is pretty interesting.
Very interesting. Gretchen, is this something you would apply for?
No, I'll just be called an insider, and my opinion isn't worth anything. So
I love your opinion. Your
Did I
point of
hurt
view.
your feelings,
I
Gretchen?
want
I'm
to
sorry.
clearly say that I love your opinion. I love your point of view, Gretchen, and I think it makes our show a lot more well-rounded, and it offers much needed check to the other side, as we love to spar with you as well.
I think this is something that is interesting because it's like who's evaluating is always the question in an applicant's mind. And I'm wondering the level of corruption there, when you have, big money rolling around. So that's something to think about.
I mean, isn't it more though, Sam, more the lack of understanding of the industry and all the nuances around it from the regulatory perspective than it is about the money that's floating around?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's like there is no basis for these things, right? We're just like they're out of thin air. There's a group of stakeholders that are deciding these things with the state. And it's
you mean like how everyone calls themselves a cannabis consultant nowadays?
I mean, look, I don't want
Cannabis influencer.
I don't want to blow up my own spot, but it's like if you've been in the industry, essentially you become a consultant at some point, but it's like to what degree? And then also it's like your basis of understanding or your limited scope of understanding of like what someone is actually saying in their application. I think you have to be qualified. Personally, I've been actually qualified as an expert witness in the state of Florida. So, I mean, things like that, it's like you have to have some credential to be able to do that, or what's the point of like actually argue.
You mean that we need an independent agency to create some regulations and standards so we can
No,
do this
I'm not
fairly?
saying that. I'm not saying an independent agency. If you're going to do that, then it has to be, a group of people that are in the industry that are actually doing the work. But that's, again, it's like, how do those people get assembled?
And maybe
there's
you
got to
should
be a technical process.
look at some of these independent agencies who have gone to the industry and have these people on their expert panels to inform them. Maybe agencies are trying to do that.
In this country, you're called a lobbyist at that point.
They're not
and
lobbyists.
You have a lobbying firm.
No, that's not. No.
Yeah,
no, Sam,
that's true.
No.
Sure it is.
There are good people out there that y'all don't know who are really trying to make this work, who have gone to the industry for help, who
But
do
what does
ask
that
the
mean, trying to
industry
make
for
this
their
work?
input.
What do you mean trying to make this work? It's working. Every state outlines.
Oh yeah.
Just,
$500 billion.
Just by your article.
It's working so well, this thing.
Exactly. Exactly. You
Well,
can't make that argument today
sick?
with that story, Saman.
I'm betting Sean can tell us how wonderfully it's working for veterans coming up in his next segment.
Well, that's a whole different ball of wax.
Okay.
I'm glad you're leaving. I'm glad you're leaving 2.5 minutes for that important subject.
Yeah.
We can take it a little overtime for you, Sean.
Let's go for it.
I'm trying to be silenced.
Stop it. Stop the ridiculousness.
You
We
shall
have
never
Sean
be
Kernan. We're going to
silenced.
try something new over here. A little segment called the
Just like
Veterans
an S on
Perspective.
Illinois when it comes to jail.
Yes.
Now,
Veterans
up next,
Perspective.
up next, offering a veteran's perspective, we have the CEO of Weed for Warriors, a father of 4, a cannabis advocate, a suicide survivor, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Sean Kiernan. What you got for us today, man? We're gonna go a couple minutes extra for you so you can get your points. You buck your shots off, my brother. What you got?
I'm gonna pull an Elon Musk. We can use my pronoun asshole.
Oh,
Listen, I'm coming to talk about an important subject here, and it's the Washington Insider. And I'm going to use Marijuana Moment and Tom Angel as an example. They put out a headline written by Kyle Jagger called "Veterans Groups Demand Congress Pass Bill on VA Medical Marijuana Research Before Session Ends." The Insider's normal Washington lobbyists and the big MSOs have been pimping the veteran angle as a straw man without giving us so much of a reach around. And we've been publicly involved against them, talking about them. And now they're trotting out other veteran organizations. This is the problem with the research bill. And what I mean by they're not giving us anything. You can tell the VA to do a lot of things, and Congress does. And it never gets done. And this would never get done if passed because it's an unfunded mandate. So there's no accountability that ever occurs. Why didn't this shit get done? So what are they really pushing? They're pushing a straw man to help get their safe banking and pressure this movement to put us in an overpriced, overtaxed, overregulated market that's going to leave us in the vast majority in the black market. So why would we pay these people to help us? That brings up an op-ed that came out of Marijuana Moment yesterday from Nick Eaton. Nick Eaton is a heroic Navy SEAL. No doubt he served his time. But there are two veteran advocates in this community. There are people who really fight for the veterans, and it's not a self-interest thing. And then there are people, taxi cabinet. And a lot of them are veteran business owners who are putting their self-interest at the center of policy. And so let's take VCP as an example. Who are they speaking for? Well, I'll tell you who they're speaking for. Nick Eaton is government relations at Acreage. Nick Eaton is also funded by Boris at Curleaf. He just signed a $150,000 deal with Curleaf to put on a few veteran meetings across the country. Why? Because at these veteran meetings, they get emails. And then they talk about how we measure these veteran organizations is their email list. IAVA and Paul Rykoff. They do not represent the veteran angle. I can tell you that. Come to our events, talk to the hundreds and hundreds of veterans who are showing up and get their opinion. But they don't want our opinion. That's why they exclude the real veterans. And we're being pimped by a lot of officers who represent 5% of the veteran population and the enlisted, and there's a kind of demographic identity here. Officers are college kids with money in general, and the enlisted are your working class and poor. So the same thing, class issue going on, is going on for veteran policies. A lot of these VSOs are pimping us for the benefit of themselves and the insiders who are carrying on the lobbying racket, and none of this serves the people. We have sold out America, we have sold out veterans, and we've sold out cannabis, good cannabis policy, for an overpriced, overtaxed, and overregulated, that, if we're being honest, was an insider deal cut between top elite cannabis groups funded by hedge funds, and that is create an oligopoly, be a part of that oligopoly, and use a lot of regulation to block everyone else. And Tom Angel is the dead center propagandist for all this. And he's using veterans, and that shit needs to stop. If you want to elevate the voice, Tom, bring a broad coalition of veterans together in the public sphere. Let's give ideas so we have a free exchange of market ideas so people can see, and let the veterans vote. Don't just anoint people who have a vested interest in the insider view to represent us, because they don't. And he has been blockading doing this. Why? He comes from the industry. Neil Levine, who was the master plan for all this. Neil was running multiple trade organizations, charging multiple fees, and he got run out. He's still working behind the scenes. How long are we going to tolerate not getting a reach around? Not just veterans, but everybody in this country. It needs to end. Signing off.
Thank you, Sean, for the veterans' perspective.
I think veterans, like other groups, you can't just like put everybody in the same box, man. You can't put everybody in the same monolithic block, thinking everybody has the same point of view. Just like as a black man in America, I got plenty of conservative friends. I'm from Virginia, man. I got plenty of conservative friends. We have very, very diverse views, and to say that all vets think this and all vets are backing this law and this proposal, I think that's wrong, like right off the bat. And to frame things like that, I agree with you, Sean. It should not happen.
Yes, thank you all.
I bet they become a mascot, instead of being
exactly.
Thanks for
all
the
right.
work you do, Sean.
And there's plenty of black people from the hood that probably support safe banking too. Gretchen.
I mean, there is. I know a lot of them.
There are. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like my opinions are my opinions.
But here at High 9, we like to welcome all opinions and perspectives.
Everybody.
To have a diverse conversation, so
Assholes
that way we can really
belly
get to the
buttons.
heart of the issues, and people can generate their own thoughts and opinions themselves.
Can I ask Sean? Yes. Can I ask you a question? Why do you feel the voice of Weed for Warriors is not being heard?
Well, I'll tell you why. So, and I got to jump here. We're over time. This is a good discussion. There's a Schedule I researcher who was pressuring Tom to listen to our concerns about some stuff he was pushing. And Tom straight up admitted, Sue, excuse me, haven't you heard? We'll say it, Dr. Sue Sisley. No, Sue's like, what are you talking about? There's been an active boycotting of Sean since he came out against Prop 64 in California in 2016. David Downs has been part of that. And what they all is all the propagandists. David Downs is not a journalist. He was an owner in Leafly. He had a vested interest in pushing a bad model that he thought was going to make him a billionaire. And so, listen, they don't want the people to have a voice. They want to use our voice for their propaganda to make them rich. And the same thing's happening in D.C. right now.
Look at Herschel Walker.
Oh, amen. They have a rainbow coalition of people, so they can't be the identity politics of bullshit.
All right. Thank you. Do you feel your question was answered, Gretchen?
You're saying, two publications in the industry are keeping your voice down. I think there's a lot
No, it's not. What I'm telling you is Let's elevate it. Only now, because everyone, let's elevate this discussion. I'm here to elevate it. Gretchen, you're my favorite insider. I believe in you. I think we can work with you. But let's elevate this voice and give voice to everybody, not just Sean, not just Nick. Everybody needs a voice. And you know what? That gets decided when you have a public airing of these issues and debate it on the town square soapbox and use our First Amendment to challenge power.
Yes, indeed. And that's why, just like Jason said, we invite all opinions on here.
I gotta go. I love you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean.
If you guys want to debate some shit, if you guys want to talk your shit, is as outlandish as it might be, come on out here, man, and debate with any of us. It might get heated, but it's always, always, always love.
Yes,
always.
It's always love. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big thank you to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity and antics that are the developing cannabis industry. Thank you to our haters for still talking about us and giving us a reason to love everybody else. And a huge thank you to our sponsors, True Classic, LAXCC, and DNA Genetics for helping us keep the lights on. Our correspondents for being insanely amazing. And thank you to Cannabis for giving us a reason to do this every day. Thank you to Zaza Simone for holding it down in Clubhouse. And to Cloud Media Productions for pushing the show on out to the airways and creating this space in the metaverse for everyone to enjoy. And thank you all again for getting high at 9 with us. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us.